Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular Town Council meeting for Tuesday, September 12th. The opening prayer will be given by Father Kingsley Ihijirika from the Most Holy Trinity Church. Please rise.
Good evening. I am honored to be invited to offer this opening invocation, and I would like to say that I have been in this city for approximately 8 months now at the Most Holy Trinity Church. I have found my parishioners to be very warm and kind and welcoming, and I have found the city to be very hospitable. The social services relative to other places I have been before are quite impressive. So all of this is thanks to your good works. So I wish you all the best, and I encourage you to keep up the good work. As often as possible, I hope to be here to answer to your requests in the future. Thank you very much. So let us pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. O good and gracious God, we thank you for the grace to be gathered here today. As these council men and women meet to discuss the affairs of this city, grant them wisdom and knowledge to make the right choices and decisions, and the courage to implement the necessary changes for the well-being of its citizens. Help them to be constantly aware of the sacred nature of this responsibility and always act according to that awareness. May their every decision bring about the advancement and prosperity of this city, always keeping in view the needs of all. May the same blessings which the city experiences through their tireless labors and sacrifices be not lacking in their lives and in their homes. In all things and at all times, may all glory and honor be to your holy and mighty name. And we make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. May Almighty God bless you in the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you.
We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
Thank you.
Fishbein. Laughlin.
Here.
Letourneau.
Here.
Marone. Shortell.
Here.
Sullivan.
Here.
Testa.
Here.
Zandri.
Here.
Chairman Cervoni.
Here. Councilor Marone has advised me that a work obligation prevented his attendance tonight. On to item 3, the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve and accept consent agenda items A through S.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda passes. Item 4, there are no items removed from the consent agenda. Item 5, public question and answer period. Mr. Gross.
Mr. Chairman, just quickly, was the motion A through S? I thought A was removed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Was it? I missed that.
Yes, there was an amendment that did to the agenda removing A. My apologies.
Okay.
If we could.
Motion to rescind consent agenda.
There's a motion to rescind the vote on item 3. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. That passes. I need a new motion on the consent agenda.
I move we approve consent agenda items B through S.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Consent agenda as corrected passes. Thank you, Mayor, for catching that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, when did the amendment go out? Because I never received it.
I think there was an email on Thursday.
Okay.
We'll look into that for you.
I'll have to check in that.
Thank you. Back to item 5, Mr. Gross.
Good afternoon, Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. How you doing? I have a question on the charter, the proposed charter revisions, and I just asking for clarification, if you could. It's on the Board of Ethics, and in here, the changes are, the Board of Ethics is the change, and then it says, shall have the powers and duties as may be set forth in the charter, the Code of Ethics, state law. So does that mean you're going to be following state law now on the Code of Ethics, if it passes?
Honestly, I am not this evening prepared to answer that question. What I will do is I will...
Town attorney, maybe?
Attorney Small has been
Okay.
the staff counsel for that particular item. So I'll forward your question to the Charter Revision Commission and we'll get you an answer.
All right, and then it goes on to say, any and I think there's a member of the Charter Commission here though too, and goes on to say, and any other ordinances of the town of Wallingford as applicable. And then it says, including to receive written complaints signed under penalty of false statement to investigate such an alleged violation of this charter, and I'm not skipping any words, that's why I want to make sure, or the Code of Ethics upon its receipt of a written complaint or its own complaint. Does that mean that anybody can write a written complaint? Because it further goes on to state, to issue an advisory opinion concerning the application of this charter and the Code of Ethics to any officer or employee upon his or her request, and if necessary to hold a hearing and determine whether a violation occurred. That's it. So the questions are, can a citizen make a complaint? It also, the way it's written, in my reading it, then the Board of Ethics can also bring forth a complaint against a possible violation.
Mr. Gross?
Yes.
I can take very educated guesses with some reasonable level of confidence to answer your questions, but instead of allowing for a degree of uncertainty in the answer to your questions, I will forward them to the Charter Revision Commission, and we will get you answers.
Do you know when? I mean, because
In a
you guys
reasonable-
approved all this, so I just didn't know if you guys understood it either, because I don't want to know, you know, I'm just curious about that reading it. Because you took away everything else in the Board of Ethics, or approved everything else being deleted from the Board of Ethics. That's the whole board, that's the whole thing from here on forward. The state law would be the interesting part if we're following state law then.
Your question will be forwarded and we'll get you an answer.
Because the mayor's here, does he know? I mean, was involved in it too. I mean, nobody knows? All right, thank you.
Legal answer.
Mr. Stankuna.
Good evening. I just want to start first. I got some
Name and address for the record, please.
Daryl Stankuna, 18 Old Village Circle.
Thank you.
I got some things to address tonight and got some questions, but I first of all want to say last night's ceremony was really inspirational. I think everybody did a great job coming out, the fire department, everybody, the Cub Scouts, and afterwards talking to some people and whatnot. So last night was a good remembrance of 9/11. But to business, we had a meeting last week, finally, after 5 years. I don't know if it had to do with me coming up on the microphone talking all summer about the opioid issue, but after 5 years from what we found out, there wasn't a meeting on this. And for 5 years of drug problems going on and occurring and whatnot, and especially this opioid epidemic, no one knows what to call it anymore, epidemic, crisis. It was very disheartening last week. There was very minimal information. Some people thought, you know, some of the questions I was asking was for me, but I went there asking questions and I was cut short a lot. And first time I ever met the police chief, Wright, I just was not impressed. He did not have informational material for that night for the opioid crisis. I asked about, what the ranges are of the arrests, and he had mentioned 18 to 65. So that just means basically the whole population. I just was not impressed with the minimal amount of information. I asked if they were mostly Caucasians, no answer. Are they mostly male, female? No answer, no data from the Wallingford Police Department. And we taxpayers pay a lot of money in this town, and it wasn't like I was asking questions of a nuclear power plant or something where he had to hide information. I mean, this is valuable information being held that the public, if we're going to try to beat these crises, we got to know things. And it wasn't like I was asking confidential information or whatnot. So it was very disheartening on that matter. And then on the other point, trying to talk, it just was not good. I mean, the coalition's trying to do what they can, but we really need to do about 98% better than that. I mean, there was really no safety program or anything. I had not to be cut short a lot, but I didn't have much time to talk or ask questions, and the information we got was there is no halfway house, which I asked, and we're referring whoever has a problem in this town, which are taxpayers in this town, to go to Meriden shelters, shelters, halfway houses, and that's wrong. That's wrong, because we're passing the ball to other cities that are already trying to deal with a bigger population, probably a bigger problem than this town with the opioids. And we need to really take care of what's going on in town by having a program for whoever they are, because I'm still trying to find out, but I see them all the time. I walk around town. There's people just drifting around. But we need to get some kind of program for these folks, find out what the genders are. We got to find out these statistics, or if they do know them, release them to to the public, to the churches, to the synagogues and whatnot. We can't. Our hands are tied if we're not getting any information. I can't help any as a citizen in town, and I'd like to. I'm trying to, and hopefully I'll win this November and get up there and do something. I have a whole plan about it. But we should have had a halfway house in this town. Treatment program with social workers. We have a lot of money for this, resources. We got plenty of time to do that when November comes, hopefully.
Mr. Stankuna, you're talking about the meeting that was last Tuesday night at the Coalition for a Better Wallingford's office on Center Street. Is that right?
That's the only one,
yeah.
Ronnie.
Yep. And I know there were public officials there, and it's not the first time they've had a meeting in 5 years. They meet quite regularly.
On this issue, they mentioned 5 years. It's on the Facebook Live. It's on the Facebook Live. And the mayor only showed up late. You weren't mentioning public officials. The mayor showed up 5 minutes when the meeting was just about to be over. So he didn't even say a word. He came late, snuck in, didn't have anything to say, and the meeting was over after 5 minutes. So if you're mentioning politicians, which that's my answer right there.
I think the Coalition for a Better Wallingford might resent the fact that you're saying they're meeting for the first time in 5 years. Because that's not accurate.
I'm saying on this opioid problem.
This is the focus of what they do. The primary focus of what the Coalition for a Better Wallingford does, and the reason why they were formed, was to address the problem of addiction.
Well, they're not. They're trying to, and you guys aren't. The council's not, and you're trying to, again, put it under the rug with this, because I just explained 98% of the problem is we don't have a halfway house.
We're not putting anything under the rug.
We don't. Well, by answering me in that kind of way is just blowing it into the wind.
No, I was correcting your information. That's not blowing it into the wind.
You could say maybe they had these other meetings, but I was told, I heard it there, 5 years.
That they've existed.
That they've existed. Is that what the, well, whatever.
That was the point of the meeting.
Well, the whole point is there's a lot of not treatment going on in Wallingford.
Thank you.
So you're smoke screening it with that. I'm just trying to figure out why, but
there's no smoke screen.
Under the rug is just kicking the can down the road. So,
so you've had 6 minutes. It's typically 3 minutes per speaker. I'm going to ask you to take a break. to give other people the opportunity to speak?
Where does it say that? I had a couple other agendas.
It's in the council rules.
That I have 3 minutes to speak? You should address that beforehand.
It's been in the
So
council
do I
rules.
speak after Mr. Gross?
You can come back up if nobody else wants to speak.
Okay.
Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. Just a couple more points to Mr. Stan Kuna. The board meets for Coalition for a Better Wallingford, meets monthly, has met monthly for 5 years. That's just the public meeting. They have subgroups that meet sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly. They have crisis groups. They have support groups for parents that have children with any type of addiction, whether it's opiate, alcohol, any type of addiction, cutting, those types of things. The board, that was a 5-year thing. The mayor not being supportive is, and I'm sure everybody's been, that's totally false.
Well, and you would agree that there's funding for them in our budget?
I'm just saying.
Yep.
I'm going to the mayor first. The mayor has been very supportive of the group, and I know, and I'm not speaking for the coalition, but the coalition is very appreciative of that. They're appreciative to the town council that supports the coalition with a generous cash donation for the coalition, so they're able to function. They're very supportive of the town agencies in the town of Wallingford that they work hand in hand with, social services, the Board of Education, etc. So, and with the police chief, they work hand in hand, and the police chief and the police department have been fabulous. They've whether they gave you numbers or that night or anything, that wasn't the purpose of the meeting that night. That was a 5-year anniversary meeting to show what all the community has come together and that all the town agencies are working together, whether it's the Board of Ed working with social services working with the police chief, etc. That was the point of the meeting. I hate for it to get out there that this group doesn't meet, that the town is not supportive of it, because those are falsehoods. The town's very supportive. The idea was to bring this to a forefront. And that was, and they have all these, maybe Daryl, you should come to their meetings once a month. They're the fourth Thursday of the month, and get involved. They have a booth every week at the Gardeners Market. They're active in Celebrate Wallingford, and Red Ribbon Week is coming up. They'll have which is an anniversary of a DEA agent, unfortunately, that was murdered, and that will be the last week of October.
Where there's events every day.
There's seven days worth of events with a culmination with a luminary walk that I'll make a plug that they're looking for donations to buy luminaries to light up Center Street from the town hall down to the gazebo. And it's $2 per luminary, and you can put somebody's name on it. I'm just making a plug since it was brought up. I'm just giving some of the things they do. Like I said, they have parent support groups, all these types of things that you might not know about, but if you go to their website, you will see all these things they do. So,
thank you for that additional information. It's helpful.
Thank you. And just remember the establishment clause too, tonight. You understand what I'm saying. Thank you.
Mr. Stankuna.
Yes, Daryl Stankuna, 18 Old Village Circle. Once again, this was steered by Bob Gross. The whole point was there is no halfway house. I didn't say they're not helping as much as they can. I said they do a great job with what resources they have. There is no halfway house. Is there, Mr. Savoni? You're nodding your head. Are you going to make one up?
Mr. Stankuna, don't make your comments personal.
Well, you're shaking your head no.
No, I'm shaking my head because you've totally changed your statement. Because what you said before in the 6 minutes that you were standing up there is that we're not doing anything and that the government's not supportive.
Not
right.
enough.
You did say in your last statement that there's no halfway house. That is correct. But to say that there's nothing going on to attack the opiate problem.
I didn't say that.
Well,
I said they're doing what they can. We could rewind the tape. I said they're doing.
I think you were citing, your opinion, a 98% failure rate.
Yeah, that's pretty high. I am believing that. I feel that there's no. The police chief didn't have any of those answers. 18 to 65 for. Arrests, he didn't know who, if it was males, females. So, but I'm going to change the subject because this is beating a dead horse, so we'll let the people decide on that. The $192 million in that fund for the retirees, how much are these retirees, the 362 of them, getting a year from that?
Is that a pension fund question?
Yes.
Mr. Bose, do you know the answer to that?
Is your question, how much is each retiree getting? I have no idea.
Like a range. Are we talking 7,000 each? Are these 50,000 each?
I have no idea.
So you don't know what you're paying out to the retirees?
I know what we pay out in total, but I have no idea what the range would be now.
And what's the total?
The total we pay out in a year is approximately $11 million.
Okay. And does that ever change the amount? Like how much was it last year? If this year was 11 million, how much?
It's relatively consistent.
So it's been 11 million every year for the decade?
No, I don't have that information.
Can you get me that information?
If you'd be good enough to call me, we will look it up for you, sure.
Okay, but at least the last 5 years, there was $11 million paid out a year.
I don't want to state that for the record because I do not know that for sure.
Okay, I'm going to call you and find out that information.
Or if you like, I'll tell you what, if you want to leave me your contact information, I will get back to you.
Okay, and then with the senior center, why don't we have where between 4 and 7 have the teenagers go there for the activities, play ping pong, play pool, enjoy the recreational, and have movie night there, you know, Monday through Friday, and that way it could be shared with the kids in town. Why don't you guys maybe think about that? What do you think?
The senior center is run by the Committee on Aging. We don't run the senior center.
But can you make a maybe request to possibly have some kind of merge with that building?
We've heard your comment.
Are you going to ask them?
I've heard your comment.
Heard my comment. All right, now with the concerts on the green, I'm telling you, a lot of people are very disappointed. We know that the Twilight Band plays out there. People think they're good and whatnot, but Hamden had Fabulous Thunderbirds a couple months ago. Every summer, these other cities that we keep throwing our problems onto to go to Meriden and New Haven, Columbus House, whatnot. These are cities having all kinds of concerts. We're not having big names come here on the green. And a lot of people I've talked to want that. So I would like the council to try to look into that in November or whenever. I know you mentioned it wouldn't happen this summer, and it didn't, but for next summer, whoever gets elected, hopefully it's a big change up there, that we get some popular bands up there, like a Bruce Springsteen or something.
So I happen to have some personal knowledge about the Hamden Summer Concert Series. I happen to be in a band that opened for Gary Puckett. And I spoke with the director of Park and Rec in Hamden, and she advised me that a band like that gets $35,000 to play for the evening. Now, that's just Gary Puckett. So I think they have either 4 or 5 concerts. They rent an entire PA system for the entire summer. That PA system comes with a staff that shows up and runs the whole system and works the stage for the entire summer. I'm guessing that concert series is a several $100,000 of cash, and it's sponsored by Quinnipiac University. I believe Citizens Bank was also a sponsor, if not Webster. And they have a piece of real estate that can accommodate that.
So do we.
We do not have a park like they do where there is a stage and a natural amphitheater.
We have the stage here and just shut down the streets like you do for the mini concerts.
What we have in front of Town Hall is not an eighth of the amount of land that they have to host those events in that particular park. That's the old municipal golf course.
Okay. And then with the road construction, still there's been no notices to anybody. I mentioned this a month ago. You guys should send out some kind of notice, that way people know to go a different route through town. You got people trying to go to work and whatnot.
So
they're being stuck in traffic, and it's preventive measurements for the work people.
There have been articles in the Record Journal about the utility construction that's been going on in town. And it's actually, the utility construction that's going on has nothing to do with the town, other than it being in town. These aren't town utilities that are doing the work. But there have been articles in the Record Journal advising people that the work was going to be done.
Well, can the town send something out to people? That way we all know when and where?
Quite often when the town publishes notice, they use the Record Journal.
How about on the website, on the town hall website? That way you just click on that, because not everybody gets the record journal or can afford it. These are tough times. And the other thing, with Bristol Myers, what is going on with the land issue? And how long has that been going on with this? And how much money have we spent already battling them on this land issue with them leaving Wallingford?
That hasn't been before the council.
Does anybody know how much this is costing?
I'm not sure what you mean by battling with Bristol Myers.
There's a land issue going on at court right now, right? With the town of Wallingford, we're spending millions of dollars with their lawyers and whatnot at court.
Well, yes, I believe there's a pending case, but I don't think we...
What's going on with that?
The town attorney is representing Wallingford, so whatever is the expenditure is coming out of what we pay for the town attorney's office and legal counsel.
And how much is that costing? And how long has that been going on? And when is this going to be over for the taxpayers?
It's only a couple of months.
It just started a couple months ago?
I believe so, yeah. A couple of months ago.
And how much has been spent on this? And what do you anticipate?
Well, there'd be no expenditures other than we're paying our attorneys salaries, obviously. They work for the town.
How much?
And we obtained an appraisal.
How much?
10, 15.
How much was the appraisal?
Something like that, 10, 15.
$15,000 for the appraisal.
A day, a month?
Pardon?
A day, a month?
No, the cost of the appraisal
for the lawsuit,
$15,000. We obtained an appraisal from an expert, and the cost of that was $10,000 to $15,000. Otherwise, the money being spent is for the time that our attorneys spend, and they receive salaries. So there's not a new expenditure.
And then the other thing, with this education fund, I'm trying to fit this all in. There's a lot more with those other questions with Bristol Myers, but I know we got a lot of business tonight. With the $20 million that we did not get funding from the state of Connecticut, right? This September, this month, we didn't get the $20 million.
That is still being debated at the state level. At one point, we were to receive approximately 17 or 18 million of it. The governor came out with his executive order, which would have reduced us by $14 million. And it's pending right now as far as what will happen. If we'll find out basically the end of this month or early October, what will be the real reduction in the education aid.
Oh, good.
And
so that's good news.
if they pass a budget, then we'll receive calculations on what we will receive under a new budget.
But it won't be the 20 million.
We don't know at this point. We're hoping that we would receive 20 million. If it's reduced, then we will be dealing with that as an issue.
So it might be the worst situation's 14 million?
At this point, I believe the worst case would be 14 million, but there's no assurance on that either.
Okay, if that does happen, is there any way the town could fill in the 6 million from one of the funds? That way the 20 million's there for our kids that are going to school and our teachers. That way no one gets laid off or no...
Did you say fill in 6 million?
Yes, if we don't, let's say...
How would $6 million cover $20 million reduction?
If you get 14 million, worst case scenario, and then we were hoping...
No, the reduction is 14 million, which leaves us 7 million we would be receiving. They're talking about the governor's executive order would provide us with $7 million.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought you said 14 million would be the worst case scenario. So we would only get 7 million, and if that happens, is there any way we could, you know, for the town residents and the taxpayers and the kids that go to school and work hard, that we could somehow, worst case scenario, emergency fund, put in 5 million for these kids?
Well, the 5 million won't cover the 14 million. So it'd still be, if we came up with another 7 million, it wouldn't cover $14 million.
Okay, but like try to add something. Let's say if it doesn't cover it, I'm saying giving amounts, maybe 5 million, maybe 10 million, I don't know. Whatever you guys could do.
Well, we will be carefully looking at that and attempting to cure the budget problems without creating new fiscal problems for the town.
Because I'm hearing from a lot of the kids that there's a shortage of paper. And you know, we can't let our kids down. This is their town too. They may not be voters, but their parents are paying money, their tax-paying money, their parents. We really owe it to these kids. They're going to be our future. So I think you should kick in 10 million if you have to, if we're short from the state. Not let the residents down. Mr. Mayor.
We are well over the public comment period.
I have one quick thing. The Wallingford Garden Club does a great job, so if we could help them out and give them more recognition. And the last thing, if we could try to get holy days for Judaism. We have none in this town. I got, you know, tons of people saying to me, how come you don't have holy days in Wallingford? Meriden, Hamden, New Haven, they have days off. They celebrate for the days and have it off for the kids and teachers. So the town should do that too. This town should have been doing that. The holy days, we should be doing that too. I mean, Martin Luther King was a street fight to get, but I mean, with the holy days, I want you guys to really look into that. Hopefully there'll be a change November 7th and we'll get holy days for the high.
Thank you, Mr. Stankuna. I am going to close the public question and answer period on to item 6.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve a bid waiver for NextGen and New England Geosystems to purchase software and complete mapping work.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. William Wright for the record, Chief of Police.
Richard Heigard, Fire Chief, and to my right is Deputy Chief Joe Setnar.
Thank you. What's going on with our CAD and RMS service?
So for the last 17 or 18 years, we've been under contract in 5-year increments with New World Systems. We are looking to seek your permission to move away from New World Systems to a Connecticut-based company called NextGen. The police chief and I have met several times over the last year and a half or so about this move. We did not take it lightly, and our recommendation is that we do move to NextGen Systems for CAD and RMS. And after a 3-year purchase price, where we're currently paying $119,000 a year for support, that would drop off to roughly $33,000. So our intent is to lower our annual costs while at the same time move to a company that is or offers Connecticut-based police departments and fire departments more efficiency, and at the same time still giving us the opportunity to use all of the features that we currently have. So
from what I read in your memo, it seems that while we're looking at saving a substantial amount of money annually, there's certain benefits to the system that we don't experience with the system we're using now. The NextGen seems to be an improved system. Am I correct to read that?
it is improved, and you are correct. Because they are Connecticut-based, there are a number of forms and reports that law enforcement is required by state statute to provide to the state either annually or daily, and in some instances. Those reports mostly now on our end are paper, converted electronically and then transmitted to the state. This new software platform will allow us to transmit that directly, in most cases, right from the car. We're required under state law now to transmit the new accident report, which can be several pages long, And also the racial profiling statistical data needs to be transmitted to the state daily. As it exists now, our officers are filling that form out in paper, and the midnight dispatchers are entering it through a state accessible portal. This software will allow that form to be completed right from the car even before the officer clears the call. And in an efficiency mindset, we transmit roughly 8,000 to 10,000 motor vehicle stops a year, and that's a lot of time savings where we're currently having to fill out this form, transmit it, and then have the midnight dispatchers who could be doing other things enter that data. That's one example. There are a lot of agencies around us that are currently using NextGen. They all speak very highly of the system. It works well for them, and our recommendation is that we move forward with this platform.
Mayor.
Yes, I just want to, with regard to some of the things we've been looking at and attempting to plan for, such as combined dispatch, one of the big roadblocks to that is individual communities having to buy a new software package in order to all be on the same program in order to have combined dispatch even work. So we're one of those communities. I'm not saying that combined dispatch can work, but having all of us out there on the same software certainly enables other things to occur that would be extremely costly. In the past, if we had gone to combined dispatch, we and maybe some other towns would have to buy a whole new software program in order to put us all on the same software and allow the records management and the dispatch to occur seamlessly. So it's a help to be joining where the rest of the communities apparently have gone with NextGen.
Thank you. Chief, anything else?
Nothing further on the police end. I would defer to the fire chief for his comments relative to his operation.
Thank you. Chief Heidgard?
I'm in total support. Deputy Chief Sentner has been leading up our side of this project, and it's the interoperability in the dispatch center. So the CAD part of this will be seamless between the both agencies, and it's just economy of scale. So that's why the reduction in cost, because most communities in Connecticut are using this, so we're going to reap that benefit as well.
Thank you. Questions from the councilor. I have Councilor Sullivan.
First time in 8 years I've gone first. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don't comment. You don't have to comment on that. Let it lay. Let it lay.
You did wave your hand 5 minutes ago. So.
Well, these are my guys. There's a lot of good things I know within NextGen that we want here, and Chief, you mentioned a couple. But I just, out of curiosity, will this also dictate the type of equipment we need to dispatch based on the GPS part of the system?
Yes. Yes.
It will. Can you give just, I know the folks at home are probably trying to understand this, can you give them just an example of how a dispatch and the type of equipment may be impacted by going to this system?
Sure. So we currently enjoy that benefit now. That's not something we're without. We are very much within that sphere right now. So the way it works for the police dispatch anyway is right now, depending on how many cars we have working, the town gets separated into equal parts. The more cars, the smaller parts. Based on the call type and the call complexity, and realizing the resource that's in the car and the special skills that that officer may have, whether they're part of emergency services, hostage negotiators, whatever that call type is, the software right now automatically looks for, one, the closest resource, and then thereafter the skill set that the officer might have. That functionality will not go away, which is critical to our operation. On the fire side, certainly Chief Heidgard can speak better to it than I can, but from a dispatch point of view, it's a seamless transition based on, again, their call type. whether it's a structure fire, a medical call, or some other type of incident, it recommends immediately that apparatus which is most appropriate for the call, considering the chief's resources, which might be either one out of service or two already busy on another call.
What about, and maybe I should have phrased my question differently. Thank you for explaining that. What about the environmental concerns? Would this system now map any waterways in the area? So maybe a foam truck would be dispatched. I've just heard this system can do that, and I just wanted to make sure it can actually show us maybe alarms and so forth going off in some of our powered equipment.
The program has a lot more functionality, and it may be beyond what we need. Right now we have some difficulty with redistricting from an original platform that we had installed in the New World system. With NextGen, it's a lot more flexible and a lot more user-friendly. So whereas we have different resources with different fire stations, with different assets, the ambulance moving to the east side of town, for example, this program is very user-friendly in inputting that resource in that district. So just in the capabilities, it's a more modern program and a lot more user-friendly. So it will definitely help the fire side in those assets, very similar to what Chief Wright was describing in the police side. The fire and police are ultimately the same, just different resources.
Okay, very good. And I'm going to close on this. You know, earlier we heard some comments here that I certainly don't agree with. I'm going to tell you what, I know as this counselor is very proud of everything the three of you do for this town. So I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, gentlemen. Nice to see you again. The name of the entity is NextGen Systems. That's who we're dealing with.
NextGen is the company title.
Okay, I've heard NextGen Systems referred.
No, the current vendor we're with is New World Systems.
Got it.
And the vendor that we're asking to go to is NextGen.
Okay, and where are they out of?
East Haven.
Okay, so that's NextGen Solutions, I believe. Because I did hear systems, and I looked up. Yeah, so NextGen Solutions, I think, is the entity that you're dealing with. Have you contacted New World to find out if they have a similar product?
Actually, the products are very similar as we speak. New World is a much bigger company which was recently purchased by Tyler Technologies in Texas. It's a much bigger program than we need. It's set up very much for a county-wide driven dispatch response. As an example, our booking module, our jail module is set up, if we needed it, that we could actually have a commissary and visitors and all of those features. We don't need that. NextGen offers us a product that's more efficient to run from a cost point of view and has everything that we need in it.
And the last time we talked about communications through your departments, we had talked about collective. Would the New World system, that seems to be a larger system, be more conducive to rendering services on behalf of Wallingford as well as the other towns that we talked about? Or would it be locked in with the NextGen sort of thing and not as much capability?
No, I'm not really sure what the question is. So.
Okay, well you said that the New World system is more county-based. It's for a larger sort of system. And certainly we've talked about combining dispatch with other towns, which
yes,
would be akin to a larger system.
Yes, sir.
So is the New World system more conducive to a larger system like that, or is the NextGen?
No, NextGen is currently used by the multi-town dispatch center that's currently housed on the top 2 floors of St. Mary's Hospital over in Waterbury, and I think they're dispatching for 10 or 12 towns, including the city of Waterbury now, is their most recent addition.
And could the New World system work that system as well?
Yes, I believe that they could do a countywide dispatch system.
What system does the state police use?
NextGen.
And it's been horrible. There's complaints upon complaints about getting reports out of the state police. Are there any other vendors that could be considered here?
There are many vendors. We spoke, Motorola recently purchased a CAD RMS platform called Spillman Technologies that's now owned by Motorola. We sat with their sales representatives. It seemed a little bit bigger than what we needed. There's another company that's recently been purchased, and at one time they were called Hunt Technologies, and I'm not sure who they've been purchased by. There are many CAD vendors.
Why not just do a bid document? Because this is we're trying to stay away from a bid document and just give this to NextGen and not use the usual process. Why not just do a bid document with the specific criteria that would meet your needs?
We've chosen NextGen based on our own analysis and our own knowledge base of talking to an untold number of police and fire officials who are currently using it. And our recommendation is that we move to this platform for, as I stated earlier, some improved functionality and a lower cost.
One of the advantages is because, as the mayor alluded, if we go to a regional dispatch center, all there's communities around us are already on the same platform. So if you have New World or any of the other platforms, they're now rewriting language to get them to communicate. And our experience with New World on the fire side, every time we want to add a functionality, their base price is $25,000, and then we'll start talking about the real cost. So one of the things we needed was rip and run. It's information in a paper format so that you can go out for a response. It has the address, any information about that present address for hazardous materials, things like that. That functionality has never been delivered by New World. We've attempted, Chief Struble started that probably 12 or 14 years ago, and it was an ongoing project where they could never deliver on that one specific item. Whereas NextGen, this is already proven. Our counterparts in other communities have all this functionality. So again, purchase power, when they're writing programs to address 90% of the state of Connecticut, somebody's already paid for that, and we don't have to have custom written computer programs just for Wallingford.
So I see a large, it's $30,000 versus $100,000 on an annual basis. And I would think, based upon what I've heard, that a portion of that $70,000 overage or increase is for those things that we don't particularly need in Wallingford. Is that the difference, or is it just they're more expensive?
Right, I think they're just more expensive. I wouldn't be able to speak, sir, to what's driving the difference in cost.
So have we gone to New World and said, you know, this is what NextGen has. Can you put a package together for us that's... Because at some point in the past, the decision was made to go with NextGen. And we've been relatively okay up until recently, and is what I'm hearing.
You mean New World?
I mean New World, I'm sorry, yeah.
We have never, I'll speak for the fire side, we have never met what our expectation with New World. So no, it has not delivered on our needs. It has, Chief Wright has been a fantastic advocate for us, as Chief Dortenzio was prior to that, but the software vendor has never fully met our objectives for dispatch. So it's been a challenge for many years on our side. Again, CAD, the dispatch is one function that works, but then it's the RMS on both police and fire. So it's been a challenge for us.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Councilor Letourneau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening.
Good evening.
A lot of this has been covered already, but in your report, over 90% of the police and fire throughout the state use the NextGen system. And you had said that you have spoken to a lot of departments, and it seems to be working pretty good. The other thing I see, you want to start in to go under contract with NextGen by December. So you'll be up and ready to go when the other contract is over in, I believe it's in June 30th. Is there, you know, so you'll be actually juggling 2 contracts? Or how does that work to get NextGen on, and then because you're still under contract with the other one, so.
So we're under contract with New World through June 30th, as you say. In order for NextGen to get started on our build, we would need to be under contract with them. It's our recommendation that we be under contract by December in order to give them appropriate time to do the data transfer and get us ready to go, and allow us a period of testing where we can determine whether or not everything that we need is there. It's quite common to switch when a software platform is switched to be under contract with 2 different companies. We've paid our financial obligation to New World for the year, July 1st, so that wouldn't be an issue.
Okay. And is this a 5-year contract also?
It's a 3-year contract.
3-year. Okay. And in that 3-year, how often did they give you an indication how often they upgrade, or is it a constant upgrading? How do they handle that?
I would say that it's fairly constant. As often as the state of Connecticut changes the forms that we're required to complete, NextGen makes those changes and introduces it throughout their platform. So the annual updates, which we currently receive from New World, would be similar with NextGen. The only difference would be these state forms that are inherent in their software could change several times a year.
Okay. You had mentioned earlier about the, say a police officer doing the report, an accident report, right in his car, and it goes right to the state. I'm assuming it goes into a database in our department also.
It does.
At the same time. Okay. And that's all I have on this, but I too heard some disparaging remarks this evening about information that wasn't brought forward, and it bothered me. You guys do a wonderful job, but I think it's more important, it's not the information, it's what your departments do on a daily basis, and the lives that you have saved, both of your departments. That's what's not being talked about. And I appreciate that. And the citizens of Wallingford appreciate that too. You guys are on the front line. Your guys are on the front line. And you do a great job. So thank you.
Thank you.
All set.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the public? Mr. Stankuna? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Stankuna, can I ask you to wait a minute? Mayor, you had something. My apologies.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I don't think it's been mentioned, the cost is $305,000 and it's paid in 3 installments. And I want to clarify that after the 3 years, we're not going to pay another $300,000. Is that correct? So the savings is on the annual maintenance, and it's going from $119,000 to $30,000. But there is a cost to buy this, and that's $305,000, 1/3 installments over the next 3 years.
But that resembles what we're paying the current vendor for its annual service, doesn't it?
Well, right. I mean, you can draw your own conclusions. I just, I think we need to be clear about what the expenditure side is. We're very conscious of that. I certainly feel that the departments have done a good job of analyzing this and come up with a good solution, but hardware, software is expensive.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Stankuna, thank you for your patience.
Daryl Stankuna, 18 Old Village Circle. I'd like to first of all address Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Letourneau.
Mr. Stankuna, I'm going to ask you to stay on topic. If you have questions about the CAD system.
I do have something on the topic. They mentioned something that's referring to me.
Mr. Stankuna,
I asked questions.
Mr. Stankuna, I am not going to allow this to turn into a debate.
Okay,
if you have questions about the CAD system.
I do, but I was offended by that. I want to know why they're not searching around like Motorola and other companies, because as we know, cheaper isn't always better. And if this system goes down because it was cheaper, and if the state police are having problems with it, I mean, they're like the biggest agency in Connecticut, why would we follow and have that next gen, a cheap program for our hardworking law enforcement agency in town, which I do appreciate, by the way, and why wouldn't they search other companies to find out what would be a better outstanding, whether it's New World, like Mr. Fishbein mentioned. Motorola is like a top-notch company. That's like the best communication company.
Chief, do you care to address that?
Yes, so we have researched and talked to, as I mentioned earlier, countless officials have looked at a number of different platforms. Being that this platform is used extensively throughout Connecticut, we've talked to both police and fire officials, we talked to line officers, we've talked to fire officials and fire officers, and from our own experiences and the comments of others, we are convinced that yes, it is much cheaper than our current platform, but we are thoroughly convinced that this is our best path forward.
And then how much is it for this midnight shift officer to do the paperwork from the officers that are sending this by email, or how's that being worked out from the car?
With the current platform?
Yes.
As it stands right now, we're required to collect roughly, and I don't want to state an exact number, probably 20 data sets for every motor vehicle stop that we complete, whether it's on the midnight shift or otherwise. That currently gets transmitted onto a paper form which we created. That form gets turned into a supervisor who checks to make sure that all of the appropriate fields are marked, and thereafter the form gets sent into dispatch, where on the midnight shift the dispatcher enters all of that data again and it gets transmitted to the state.
And then how long does that process usually take right now?
For the form to be entered by the dispatcher?
No, by the officer sending it in, the whole process from scratch to finish.
Half hour all in.
That's not that long. That's for the whole wrap up of everything? A half hour?
Takes a few minutes to fill a form out in the car. A supervisor spends another handful of minutes making sure that all the appropriate boxes are checked.
So we're talking just 30 minutes.
Roughly.
So you're paying someone that's already working to do something during the night shift where it's very quiet, and you're going to pay $305,000, right? Is it $305,000 the mayor said to install the equipment? Hello? Anybody?
So yes, you're correct. The cost of the software is $305,000, but that gets us much more than just this form that we're talking about. And yes, it only takes a few minutes out of the dispatcher's day to enter this data into this state portal. I'll offer you, sir, that it is very busy on midnights now, as it's been the last several years. It's not quiet. And the dispatchers, if there are prisoners in, have a lot of other duties that they're responsible for. This is one example of where we can scrape off some efficiency, get this data entered that we're required by the state to enter and submit. There are no failures on our end. We are in 100% compliance year after year after year, not only because the state tells us to, because it's the right thing to do. And this is the manner in which we believe is our best path forward. This one form that we're talking about is just a simple example of some of the efficiency that this software can offer us, because so many of these state departments are using it that a lot of these state forms that we're required to fill out are inherent in their software.
And there's still no email, right? The officers don't have an email?
Our officers can be contacted via email to the appropriate shift commander if they're in patrol, or otherwise throughout the building to a personal email address that we've set up for them.
But not in the squad car?
There's absolutely no email into the squad car. I prohibit that because there is motor vehicle information running into the car that is highly regulated by the state and federal government, which does not allow email into the car, because the two software platforms for motor vehicle information and criminal history information cannot be commingled with email.
And you mentioned that the midnight shift is busy.
They're busy.
Like, what's going on?
Well, this morning at 5:15 in the morning is one example. I think we had a 5 or 6 car crash on Route 5 that took up probably 65 or 70% of the available workforce during when rush hour starts and our town gets even more busier than it is. Never mind the overnight work that went on. Yesterday evening we had a carjacking from behind Staples that we are actively working on all night long. It's busy.
Okay, and then with that, so you have less officers then on midnight shift?
We staff our shifts to the appropriate call volume that we have. We move officers around continually. It's a daily chess game in consideration of collective bargaining, mind you, that we move officers where we need them most. It's very, very busy in the summertime. We staff our shifts appropriately. We are running our heaviest shift now on midnights because it is very busy in the summer months. As we get towards the winter time, we'll dial that back and put more officers on the day shift.
And then, are we paying overtime though for these people to do the filing and process?
Not unless it's a staffing issue in the dispatch center, which requires backfilling on overtime.
And how often does that happen?
On a midnight shift?
Yes, where they had to go to first shift to finish this paperwork.
I'm sorry, I missed your question.
When did this process interfere in the supervisor? You said the supervisor has to do something for a half hour? They have to do the whole process?
We've been filling out these racial profiling forms for probably 15 years.
Okay, how many times during the 15 years has this supervisor had to stay after or into the next shift to finish this program?
We don't hold supervisors for that reason.
Did anyone, here we go, I'm being stonewalled. Has
You're not
anyone
being
stayed?
stonewalled.
I'm not being answered.
Why is that question important?
Because it's very important, because it has to do with tax, it has to do with money being spent. If there's overtime being spent on a supervisor and officer, then we're talking about...
The answer I heard clearly answered that question.
Not really. Did anybody stay into the first shift to finish this process? How many times over 15 years has someone had to stay and over their, whatever you have, 8-hour shifts to finish this process? I mean, I can't believe this.
I just want to make sure I understand your question. To complete this simple form that we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. I couldn't tell you with any great certainty, sir, but it's imperative that it gets done before the officer leaves.
Okay, but how many times has this interfered in the shift where they had to stay after third shift into first shift where it cost the taxpayers money? That's what I want to know.
I don't have an answer for you.
Don't, or you do?
I don't have an answer for you.
Okay, so then how can there be no answer again to pay $305,000 for a program that isn't costing more money for this process to be done, where they've been handling it for 15 years, this process, without it being paid into extra money? Why would we pay an extra $305,000 to install something that's not costing the taxpayers any more money?
It's not an extra. It's a replacement. And when you do the math, while we're paying for the installation of the new system, it's reasonably equivalent to what we're paying for the current system. Once we've made the 3 annual payments, the savings is tremendous by comparison.
That's not what I heard tonight.
Mayor, did you have something?
Yes, I was going to point out the same thing. The cost of the system over 3 years, when that's paid, it's approximately, what, $70,000 less per year on the maintenance than on the existing. So there's a major savings.
Okay, I didn't hear that till just now. Thank you for clearing that up, Mayor.
Anyone else from the public? There being none. Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we're going potentially to a new system, the training of the officers and utilization of this, are we going to be is NextGen going to be paying for that, providing that? How is that working?
It's built into the cost of the purchase.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to say I'm very proud of all of you. So, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Before I call the vote, I'm going to take the opportunity to say that I've had personal conversations with the three of you about the way your departments run. And I find you all to be very committed individuals. And as has happened every time you've been before my council, this council, and the prior councils, you're exceedingly prepared. You have answers to questions that are relevant to what we need to know to make decisions. For that, I am grateful. Chief, you and I have had direct discussions about certain issues in this town. And I know that you are exceedingly aware of what the problems are that this town faces on the streets, what the health issues are that were discussed earlier. And I know that you know what you need to know, that you care, and that you're directing your force accordingly. And I think we are seeing results. If you read the papers, not everything makes the papers, but if you read the papers, drugs are being stopped in this town. And I think this system will allow you to continue to do your good work and save us money in the long run. And you've pointed out significant efficiencies that will occur when you switch to this system.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Fishbein?
Yes.
Laffin?
Yes.
Letourneau?
Yes.
Marone? Absent. Shortell?
Yes.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Testa?
Yes.
Zandri?
Yes.
Chairman Cervoni?
Yes. That was unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Apologize, Mr. Chairman. The second item on my document is for a bid waiver for New England Geosystems, which is a mapping component.
That was part of the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Super. Thank you.
Yep. On to item 7.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve an appropriation of funds in the amount of $600,000 for the sewer division, $600,000 to treatment plant structures and improvement accounts, $439,854 of that was appropriation from cash, $160,000, 146 from appropriation to cash.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Good evening. For the record, I'm Richard Hendershot, Director of Public Utilities. To my right, council's left, is Neil Amwake, General Manager of the Water and Sewer Divisions. And to my left, the council's right, is Mr. Bill Phelan, Office Manager for the Water and Sewer Divisions. With the council's indulgence, I've prepared some opening remarks that I hope will frame and summarize our need to be here for this proposed budget amendment. First, thank you for the opportunity to present this information for council consideration. The Sewer Division seeks to amend its fiscal year 2017-2018 capital budget by adding $600,000 to the account for treatment plant structures and improvements. These funds, if approved, would come from reducing the division's 2017-2018 budgeted appropriation to cash, effectively its net margins, to $0, and by moving an additional $460,000 from retained earnings, its cash on hand, into the current fiscal year budget. These funds are needed to provide adequate funding for the development of a wastewater treatment plant facility plan, which the division now anticipates will cost just under $1.1 million. The division originally budgeted $500,000 in its fiscal year 2016-2017 budget for producing this facility plan. After becoming the Water and Sewer Division's General Manager in June of 2016, Mr. Amwake began efforts in early 2017 to secure the necessary engineering consultant services to produce the facility plan. The qualification-based purchase provision of the town's purchasing ordinance was used, and the town council approving that purchasing methodology on March 28th of this year. Since then, the Sewer Division staff has advanced this effort to the stage of identifying the preferred service provider and has negotiated a price of $1,047,000 for the full scope of services. The requested budget amendment will result in total available funding for this project during the 2017-2018 fiscal year of $1.1 million, which will provide for 5% contingency funding. The schedule for producing the facility plan calls for its final delivery in 210 days, with delivery of a fast-track phosphorus removal plan at the 120-day mark and a draft of the complete facility plan at approximately the 180-day mark. The Sewer Division needs to produce this facility plan for two reasons. First, the existing wastewater treatment plant has been in operation for over 28 years, and there has not yet been a comprehensive stem-to-stern review of the plant and its existing facilities, equipment, and processes. Connecticut DEEP has a stated planning period for wastewater treatment plants of 20 years. Up to 25 years is considered the outside limit for new plants, such as Wallingford's, which was substantially completed in July of 1989. But by any measure, it is past time for an up-to-date facility plan for Wallingford's wastewater treatment plant. Second, significant changes to wastewater treatment plant effluent nutrient limits are anticipated in the near future and are effectively known at this time. The existing plant will be issued a draft permit in April of 2018 with revised phosphorus discharge limits. New total phosphorus discharge limits will go into effect on April 1 of 2022 that allow less than 1/2 the amount of phosphorus discharge allowed today. By one numerical measure, 0.31 milligrams per liter versus 0.7 milligrams per liter. Current Connecticut DEEP regulations require plants that do not yet meet these new values, such as Wallingford's, to be under construction for efforts to do so by April 1 of 2020. Additionally, to be eligible to receive the maximum available federal and state grant funding for phosphorus removal, the construction contract for any new phosphorus removal facilities and all closely related facilities must be issued by July 1, 2019. This is less than 100 weeks from now, and there is no slack time in our schedule to meet this 2019 deadline. Time is of the essence. We would also note that the Sewer Division spent more than $460,000 total over calendar years 2015 and 2016 for nitrogen discharge credits. We do not know the long-term future of Connecticut DEEP's nitrogen credit purchasing program, whether or not nitrogen credits will be available for purchase in the future, and if so, at what cost, or what future permitted nitrogen discharge limits may be. The proposed facility plan will evaluate improving the wastewater treatment plant's nitrogen discharge values in a cost-effective manner. Because the Sewer Division utilized the qualification-based purchasing process for the consulting engineering services, the resulting facility plan is reimbursable from Connecticut DEEP at a 55% grant. In this case, that equals to approximately $600,000, which would then bring the ultimate cost of the study down to about $500,000, the original budget estimate. Also of note is the Sewer Division's expectation when developing its 2016-2017 budget that this study would be self-funded. To stay on schedule for meeting this important July 1, 2019 milestone, the Sewer Division needs to expeditiously advance efforts to perform the first critical task on the path to securing DEEP approval and funding for the upgrades needed at the wastewater treatment plant in order to meet the 2022 permit levels for phosphorus discharge, namely produce a facility plan. For these reasons, we ask the Town Council's approval of the requested budget amendment. Again, thank you for the opportunity to make these opening remarks, and you also have copies of Mr. Amwake's very thorough August 1 memorandum to me, which describes this matter in greater detail. Mr. Zamwake, Phelan, and I are now available for any questions you may have.
Is that the August 31?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your opening. Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, gentlemen. Am I to understand that the fact that the qualifications-based bidding process was utilized here opens up the reimbursement from the state and feds?
For the study, yes.
Okay, and if we had not used the qualifications base, we would not be able to get a reimbursement?
Correct.
Okay. The process, because something needs to be done here. I think that's quite clear. But it appears that money doesn't get discussed until after essentially you've identified who you want to do business with. That's how this works?
Correct.
So going into this, somebody estimated $500,000.
The previous Director of Public Utilities and the then interim General Manager of the Water and Sewer Divisions placed what they identified in notes we located as a placeholder budget item on the first draft of the 16-17 budget, which was produced in December of 15.
So it was a good number, $500,000 at that time?
It was their number. They didn't anticipate using the qualification-based process. I don't think they put more thought into it than about $500,000 and placed that in the budget.
Okay, so at least as we've seen here, they perhaps underestimated by more than 100%, because we're more than double.
Precisely.
Yeah. The 5-member selection committee that had to do with this, is there any reason why no member of the PUC or the Director of Public Utilities was part of that process?
The level of technical expertise required to do this, to judge the qualifications of the bidders are such that I'm not technically qualified to do it. My background is not in water and sewers, except for what I've gleaned in the time of sitting here in meetings and such at Wallingford, and the commission significantly less so. It's a very technical evaluation process.
Okay, we had heard months ago how, well, PUC members had a level of technical ability that was superlative, so. And if we don't get the money back, the intent here is to have enough money in the budget to cover that.
We won't be reimbursed by the 55% grant for the study until construction begins. So the study needs to be done first. We will pay for the study. It will produce the list of things that need to be designed for, then bid and constructed. When the construction begins, we will be eligible for the 55% refund.
And of the 55%, because I didn't see it in the memorandum, what portion is state and what portion is feds?
It's our understanding it's roughly a 50-50 split of the funding. Is that a correct representation? Federal money with the state. Yes.
And in the memorandum, it didn't say who you're dealing with here. So
the firm we've selected?
Yes.
AECom.
Okay. And I take it that since you're here, the PUC voted affirmatively on that group?
Yes, we're here because the PUC voted affirmatively on the budget amendments.
In the budget amendment to hire this entity?
We didn't highlight the firm at the time. I'd have to go back and look at the minutes. What we talked about was this is the price was a result of the process we've described, and the PUC voted to amend the budget.
Okay, and of the three entities, because I have reviewed your minutes, of the three entities that you were dealing with, how many of those entities did you get a price from?
Oh, just AECom?
Yes.
Right.
So it's your...
I believe AECom's name was mentioned in the course of the minutes, or the course of the discussion, but it wasn't the highlight of the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I have a, I have a problem. I did review the minutes. I have a problem with the process and the stock issue, if we were going to call it that. One of the members of the PUC evidently has stock in AECom, and I'm just not comfortable with where we are. So I think there should have been, it's one of the problems with having a three-member PUC. I know that something needs to be done. I don't know that I'm comfortable where we are in the process. So I think you've given me the information that I've asked for, and I thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Letourneau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does this monies, if the monies are approved tonight, would this be just for the phosphorus removal at the plant, or would it be also, the study also go into possible plant expansion?
The study will be, as described in my opening remarks, a stem to stern review of the entire plant. Phosphorus removal is a large part of that, but certainly not everything that the consultant will be looking at and including in the study.
Just if I can help, it is not about expansion of the plant, which is why we have the I&I program to hopefully avoid having to expand the plant. But this would be to replace, renew a plant that is 28 years old. But my understanding is we're not talking about expanding the plant.
Well, flows is something that the consultant will look at, but we're not sitting here knowing that the plant needs to go up 50% in its capacity. We're working real hard to comfortably stay in the 8 million gallons a day permit range we are in presently.
Okay, okay. I just asked that because it's come up before in prior years, before you guys were here, that, this has always been an issue whether we need to expand the plant or not, and I know the Water Division in the past has done everything possible, like the mayor said, to bring the inflow down, the rainwater for the folks at home. In your report, it says the estimated construction cost of $19 million in 2012 would be eligible for a 50% grant through the Clean Water Fund. So how was that arrived at in 2012? Do you have any knowledge of that, or? I know it's unfair because you guys weren't here, but I just didn't know if you had any notes on this.
I'll let Neil answer that as best as we can.
Okay.
In 2012, a consultant was hired to take a look at basically the 4 technologies out there and basically give a range of what the estimated costs would be based on the expected permit limit. That 19 million was strictly for construction of phosphorus tertiary treatment, did not include design nor construction administration, resident observation, or other legal fees. So that basically is construction only of phosphorus, doesn't include design or any other parts of the plant that would need to be upgraded or renovated at the same time in order to accommodate the phosphorus treatment.
Okay. So, and that's a 2012 estimate. So when you applied, I don't have a page number here. I think it's page number 3 of 6. It's the second paragraph down. It says 55% planning grant provided the municipality has received prior written approval of the fees and scope of work from the Department of Deep. So municipalities that expend funds for eligible planning efforts without receiving written approval from the department will not be eligible for reimbursement at a later date. So is this $19 million, is that part of what was approved by DEEP, or I'm just a little confused on that?
Okay, no, it is not. So concurrent with going in front of the town council as well as the PUC for a budget amendment, we have assembled an entire 2-inch binder of our entire QBS process and submitted that to DEP for their review and approval. We cannot execute the contract with AECom until DEP signs off on the scope of services as well as the fee development.
Okay.
So we have submitted a binder that included our original town council approval of QBS from March 28th, our RFQ, the 2 addendums we issued. We provided them with the rating criteria for the technical submissions, the rating criteria for the interview commission, interview sessions, and then the scope, and then the fees.
Okay. Okay.
So we are not eligible for the 55% grant unless they sign off on it.
Okay. And how does that look? I mean, do you have any indication at all from them? Have you been in conversation with them?
We did. So we hand delivered the binder last Thursday to DEP at 79 Elm Street, and then I sat with one of their staff engineers for about an hour and walked through the process almost section by section, step by step. This is a standard process for them. Other municipalities have done it. But, just added some insight. I know you don't have the RFQ, but we spent a lot of time with staff really dictating what we wanted, what the technical submissions should include. When we shortlisted it to the interviews, we set it up. We invited the 3 consulting firms, one was a team, to come in, give a presentation for 30 to 45 minutes, and then the 5-member panel had another hour-plus discussion of technical questions and specifically going over their technical proposal, what they mentioned in the interview, as well as really kind of what their design philosophy was, what was their approach. So, we're looking for someone that's going to work with us as a team, not that's going to pull something off the shelf and just say, this is what you need. And, in between the technical submissions as well as the interviews, staff has been going to different treatment plants who do have phosphorus treatments. And so we've seen what technologies are out there, what we like in design, what we don't like in the design. So we brought that knowledge back to us for the interviews and in our technical ratings.
Okay. And just my last question is, so you've been working on it for a while, and it looks like you've done a lot of work on this. Why wasn't this put in the original budget, come budget time, for us to come before us when we're setting the budget?
You mean, why wasn't in this instance, the additional $600,000 placed in the 17-18 budget?
Yeah.
At the time that was put together, they didn't know what it would be.
Okay.
Another thing, we would not typically want to show what we're willing to pay before we go out and start negotiating.
I understand. You were still in negotiations at that time. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Zandri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, gentlemen. Some of my questions have already been answered, so I appreciate the council's bringing it up before me. I just have a couple of quick questions, just for clarification. The extra $600,000 that we're looking to allocate, can you just define that for me a little bit better? Is that a new appropriation that we would be taking from taxes or from the rates collected? Can you just define that?
Yeah, as you know, there are no tax dollars in play in any of the enterprise funds in the Public Utilities Department. The funds would be essentially an on-paper transfer of about a quarter of what we're requesting to take the budgeted margins from sewer division operations for this fiscal year and apply them to this capital account as a source of funds. The other 3/4 would come from the retained earnings of the sewer division. Effectively, it's cash on hand, the cash in the bank.
So for me, my own edification on it, so you're taking some from savings effectively, and you're taking is it fair to say a buffer that you've got and you're shrinking it so that you can apply it here?
We're taking a quarter, we're applying the anticipated profit, if we can use that word, of the sewer division for this year to fund about a quarter of it, and the other 3/4 would come out of the savings.
Okay, so effectively it shouldn't affect rates then either.
It won't have any impact on rates for the reasons you just described, yes.
Thanks. And then the only other question that I have is the total cost for the construction, which was the 19 million we've been discussing up here that was originally set back in 2012. Has that number changed or been increased now that 5 years has passed? Do we have a different estimate?
Well, yes, we do, and it's not an apples-to-apples comparison. As Mr. Amwake pointed out, that $19 million 5-year-old number is a very stripped-down number. Our estimate right now of the cost to accomplish all the things that would be associated with phosphorus removal and all the other parts...
I would hesitate to talk too much unless it's, you know, well over $25 million, but before we get an analysis and ultimately a bid price, I don't think we should be putting those numbers out there. But
well, I agree, Mayor, and it's our estimate is just that of, and it's total, and the bid would be parts and pieces. This is designed and everything, but it's in the $25 to $30 million range.
Okay.
And I want to qualify that because the mayor's comments are a good one. I mean, that's a typical swag, you know, plus or minus 25%.
That's fair. That's a fair assessment. The other question that I have is, you're probably going to have to refresh my memory of it. The phosphorus levels, they get computed, they change as they come downstream. Am I remembering that correctly? Other towns have a different level that they have to have than we do. Am I remembering that correctly, or is it the same for all water treatment?
I know it varies. I'm going to let someone smarter than me answer that question for you.
Each town was assigned its own phosphorus limit, so I have the numbers back at the office, but I certainly don't have them memorized other than ours.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, but we, as you get closer to the sound, does it increase or decrease?
I would say increase.
It increases.
I know Cheshire is lower than us.
no, but actually, once you get into tidal waters, there's no requirement. So North Haven, New Haven would have no requirement. It's only upstream. So when you say downstream, we're the southerly boundary on the Quinnipiac as far as the need for a phosphorus removal. Anyone south of us does not need to remove it, right?
All next. Well, next is the last one.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
but town of Wallingford.
Yes, yes.
Town of Wallingford boundary is the southerly boundary.
I have a joke for downhill, but I don't think this is the right place for it.
Nice catch.
Given that, is any of this work upstream, there's no way to combine the effort, because they have their limit and they only have to reach their limit, and then we're required to I guess the way to look at it is if an area more north of us has a lesser limit, they only have to spend X, we have to spend X plus more because we have to do more. There's no sharing, they have to make sure it hits a certain number before it gets to us, and then we have to continue from there to mitigate it further. Is that correct?
I think one significant factor is the technology being used by each community can be so different that it definitely affects the cost. And that's my understanding. Every community does not have the same type of treatment process. And once you begin to change and add, it is different equipment, different processes involved. And is that correct? Everyone doesn't have the same type of treatment plan. Okay. So that inevitably affects what you're going to do to improve the capabilities in any given plant. It's going to have a different price tag.
Oh, those two things are correct, Mayor, yes. Additionally, I was checking with the subject matter expert to my right, and Councilor Zandri, I want to make sure that we're saying the same thing, that the communities that are located upstream, their permit number is actually more strident than ours. The further upstream the discharge is, the lower target, the less sulfur, phosphorus, they're allowed to put into the water. Ours would be in the Quinnipiac watershed, essentially the highest permitted level for a municipality by virtue of our geography. So the 0.31 that we anticipate being permitted for, needing to comply with by April 1, 2022 is lower than the communities that are upstream.
Okay, so
it's a higher number, yes. It's lower, it's less work to do. Yeah.
Right. So I guess that does answer my question. This looks like that with 5 years worth of time going by, the costs have increased, which makes sense. And it looks like that, you know, we're responsible for our numbers. The other towns only have to hit their numbers. There's no cooperation. There's no way, because the systems are just different. There may be a lot more treatment that we have to do than another town does. So there's no way to like combine costs or, you know, get an economy of scale, for lack of a better way to say it. We're pretty much on our own having to deal with it.
Correct.
All right, I guess that's all the questions that I had. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions from the council? Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to, I heard the word negotiations. I'm just trying to figure out what happens here. There's communication with AECOM. We want to know your number. Is there a back and forth, or they know the process? They know that more than likely they're the winner per se. Is there a real negotiation, or is it just take it or leave it?
I'll let Mr. Emwick answer that question, because I know the answer to it, but he'll describe it better than I will.
Okay, thank you.
So first, we did basically discuss and negotiate the scope of services, what's in, what's out. They came up with a fee, and then we went back and forth through 5 iterations of the fee, including we had a meeting between myself and the project manager. We went task by task, line by line, personnel by personnel, and negotiated the fee. You know, as a point of reference, I came from consulting, so I built these on the back, on the other side of the fence per se. So we had about a 2+ hour face-to-face, along with a lot of emails and conversations. So this was a negotiation. The fee where it is today was not where it originally started.
Can you tell me where it did start?
Approximately 4.8% rater.
Okay.
We're north of 1.1 million.
Okay. I thought we were at 1.1.
We're at 1.047, and that includes a 53,000 contingency. The original price proposal from AECOM was greater than 1.1 million.
Okay, and then let's just say conceptually that we wait, and I'm not suggesting, I'm just talking about hypotheticals, and everyone upstream does this and mitigates the phosphorus. Would it not decrease ultimately what we would need to do here? It wouldn't, perhaps wouldn't change what we're doing tonight, because you're still going to need a study, but ultimately the cost.
No.
Why not?
Our number is our number. The 0.31 milligrams per liter on a monthly average flow in the phosphorus measurement season is what we will be required to perform by April 1, 2022.
But currently the testing, a portion of that testing that happens in the Quinnipiac River includes phosphorus from upstream.
No, that's what comes out of the pipe out of our plant.
Oh,
that's what we're required to meet. Not what the river is, what we put into the river.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. That's, okay, that's helpful. So, okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Any other questions from the council? From the public? Mr. Stankuna?
Hi, Daryl Stankuna, 18 Old Village. I know I'm annoying to you. You rolled your eyes again, Mr. Cervoni. But we are the public, and I have some questions, so I know you don't want me to come here.
Mr. Stankuna, really direct your questions at the
I am,
subject
but I'm
matter.
just saying what you're doing. Now, with the phosphorus, how often is that tested?
We take weekly measurements between April 1 and October 31st.
And that's weekly, is that like once a week or daily? You mean weekly, once a week?
I would refer that to our chemists and our two chemistry technicians down at the wastewater treatment plant. I don't drill down that deep. I get the numbers.
Is there a way we could find out if that's tested daily?
We can look into that.
Because I know, a lot of people want to know about it. And then with this possibly happening, how long has this problem been occurring, or how long have we been putting the patch on it to try to fix this?
Well, it's not a problem. It's new standards that are coming down the pike, and so now it's time to ensure that the plant can meet the standards. I can say, although I'm new to these processes, that the sewer division staff has worked a minor miracle in causing this plant to perform as well as it has. We euphemistically refer to the plant as the bumblebee. The adage is that a bumblebee is not supposed to be able to fly, but it does. And this plant shouldn't achieve the performance measures that it does now, but it does. And that's through the daily efforts of the staff down there coaxing performance out of this plant that it was never designed to achieve. That having been said, the plant's not getting any younger, and at 28 years of age, it needs to be reviewed, and enhancements and life extension work identified and planned for. And that's what we're here for tonight, is to seek funding authority so we can do the plan so that the plant can be maintained and its life extended at the best value possible.
Is there another way to possibly take more cash from the other account to pay for this?
To what end?
Rather than the $160,000, why not take like $300,000? Where'd the calculations come?
It's all the sewer division's funds. We're allocating the budgeted profit from this year, and then everything else comes out of savings. If you're suggesting cut something else in the budget to pay for this, what will happen is if as the sewer division performs in the course of the year, if accounts come in under budget, those not spent funds revert to retained earnings and go into the savings account from which the approximately $460,000 is requested.
Okay, and then how long does it take to make that kind of money to reserve it?
The sewer, not understanding the question, I hesitate to answer.
Okay, the $400,000, how long did it take to build that money to have that to be able to pay for this structure?
I don't know. For example, this year's budget only had anticipated margins of about $140,000. That's assuming every penny of the budget gets spent, which rarely does that happen. In other years, I'm certain that the sewer division had margins well in excess of that.
And one last question. If this does get passed, are the residents' rates going to go up from this?
Mr. Zandri already asked us that question, and we answered no.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? I bring it back to the council. And seeing no hands, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Fishbein,
Yes.
Laffin,
Yes.
Paterno,
Yes.
Shortell,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Testa,
Yes.
Zandri,
Yes.
Chairman Cervoni.
Yes. That passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
On to item 8.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the amendments to the real property tax incentives for manufacturers, real property tax incentives for Office of Development, and personal property tax incentives for manufacturers from the EDC as proposed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We do have members of the EDC here, as well as our development professional.
Hello, team.
Names for the record, please.
Gary Papiano. I'm co-chair of the Retention and Incentives Committee, along with my co-chair, Rosemary Panetta.
If you could stay close to the mic.
How's that? Rosemary Panetta and Tim Ryan from the staff, who is our key person who drives our programs, and we're very glad to have him on board all the time now. We're here to present the incentive programs and retention programs for business development for the town of Wallingford. This is a review process that we've gone through, and the new programs we feel reflect the current business, situation in the town. We can go through in detail on each one if you'd like, or the process that we went through. But if there's questions or if you'd like to go through each one, please let us know.
Why don't you let us know how you got to where you are?
Okay, Tim.
Gladly, thank you. So the programs, the tax incentive programs that we did have expired December 31st of 2016. So we took on the journey of working collaboratively with a number of folks, commercial and industrial real estate brokers. We wanted to talk to them about what makes a deal come to the table. We talked to several funding sources and lending sources. Our law department was engaged in the process, as well as our tax assessor, trying to just better understand the marketplace, understand the inventory that we have available in this town that we wanted to try to take an impact, and as a result of that came up with the proposals that are in front of you. We spent some time saying what types of businesses are the best fit for Wallingford, what types of businesses do we want to attract to the town, data centers, advanced manufacturing facilities, technology-driven companies, and many advanced manufacturers and small manufacturing facilities now are in fact technology-driven organizations, as you know. And we frankly look for people who are heavy power consumers. So we identified a target audience. We then start looking at market trends, and we also look at the inventory in town. We are, frankly, a bit concerned about the amount of available office space that we have in town. It's higher than we're comfortable with, but that's the genesis behind the proposals that are in front of you. I will say that not any one of these is a silver bullet. They are designed to take and hopefully try to move the needle. In each case, they incent grand list growth. So in no case are we saying that the taxpayers would take any less in terms of a tax levy that they're taking right now. However, if growth is there, that we're discounting the growth to incent the growth to happen. And in each case also, there are clawback provisions in each in the event that whoever we have the arrangement with does not fulfill their end of the obligation.
So the most significant change that jumps out to me is reducing the minimum improvement or property improvement, reducing it from $3 million to $1 million. And I presume that change resulted from the process that you just discussed with us. Are you finding that there's either a reduction in the cost of technology and equipment in the current market, or do we need to lower the incentive floor in order to attract more businesses right now?
So that's a great question. So the $3 million down to $1 million is reflective of the fact that larger, big box factories are not necessarily happening anymore. Specialty manufacturing is really where things are going. Specialty manufacturing facilities typically are smaller in terms of square footage and cost a little bit less to start. It also reflects the fact that we have some office space in town in our industrial parks that we believe could be converted and may eventually be converted, because the outlook for office is not rosy over the next 5 years. So we start looking at that office space and saying, what is the next best use? And can some of that be converted into specialty manufacturing, light manufacturing? We believe some of it can be. So to take the $3 million threshold, reduce it to $1 million is reflective of, A, if it's a new build, the big guy still gets the benefit, but we certainly would like to incent the smaller guys as well. And at the same time, if someone was to convert an office facility into specialty manufacturing, it would come under that same dollar. So it's the old plan was just for new build. The new plan is for new build and/or renovation.
Thank you. Questions from the council? Councilor Turno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The draft proposals that you presented to us and the figures that you presented to us, how does that compare to the surrounding towns? How does this, for Wallingford, I know this was, you worked on it and you did a lot of work on this for Wallingford, but how do we compare to some of our surrounding towns?
Well,
what are they doing?
I think if you look at the surrounding towns, there are numerous that have enterprise zones and other programs that are available to them. We really focused on what the picture looks like in the town of Wallingford at this time. As Tim mentioned and as our committee reviewed, the various properties that are available now. And again, the drive is not just building new, but renovating existing. So I don't know if that answers your question, Sean.
I can add to that there are neighboring towns, one in particular that I won't mention publicly, that they give a tax break to a storage facility. So I think that there are tax incentives, frankly, that are used beyond what we think is a good use. We like to say deliberate and purposeful. We target and zero in on a specific type of business or industry, and then we say, let's put together a plan to attract that particular business and industry. We don't think it's, our up and down our retail corridor on Route 5 is very strong. It's doing very well. We wouldn't be good stewards of the taxpayers' money, I think, if we proposed an incentive for retail on Route 5 or a storage facility for that matter. So it's, I know it's not a direct answer to your question, no, Councilor, but
that's fine.
It's kind of the Wild West depending on the town, its particular fiscal situation, and how desperate they may be for business.
And with the overabundance of office space, or the surplus of office space, and hopefully some of that can be changed to light manufacturing, how is that being received by planning and zoning? Because that would be actually a change of zone.
The proposals before you are for the IX and I-5 zone. If there was an office building in the I-5 zone, then you are absolutely correct. We'd have to collaborate with the planning and zoning. We did, in the plan of conservation and development, one of the objectives there is to take a look at the land use in the I-5 zone, land uses in the I-5 zone, and the planning and zoning folks have made a commitment to look at that, and I think there's a very strong likelihood that that'll be changed. Just for everybody's edification, the uses right now in the I-5 are office and hotel. And right now we are adequately inventoried on hotel rooms, actually perhaps even a little bit over inventoried on hotel rooms, especially with the exit of Bristol-Myers. And office is really, it's a one-off if you get someone to come in and build an office building in this day and age because of construction costs and because of the availability of what's out there in bricks and mortar. So to leave those two land uses in the I-5 is basically saying you're not going to have any development in the I-5. So to your point, we ought to take a look at, and it's on the list from the Plan of Conservation and Development to take a look at land use there.
Good, thank you. And thank you for the work you've put into this. It's very comprehensive and good job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Councilor Zandri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. So a couple of questions come to mind for me. First, with the lowering of the entry floor, for lack of a better way to say it, does it also allow for, and I think you've kind of alluded to some of this, a facility that's already maybe established that's going to be converted or made changes to? So this would also apply to something like that? Absolutely. Do we have a way to raise the tier? In other words, I know there's a amount of tax incentive, but I mean, it'll hit a ceiling depending on how much is being done. Is there flexibility to grow it? And I'm leading with a question here, but I mean, like, in other words, like, what's the maximum tax incentive that someone's going to get, whether and at what level does that happen?
So the max is 50% of whatever the growth in the assessed value is. And we spent a fair amount of time on the language, recognizing that your observation about an existing company that says, I want to expand. So they invest that, let's say that threshold $1 million to expand. But let's say they spend it on some frivolities to polish the place up. And then our assessor goes in and they assess the building and the value only goes up by $900,000. All right, well, we're not incenting anything under $1 million. The grand list has to grow by the million. So you have to illustrate that you've invested $1 million, but we're incenting growth to the grand list of the $1 million plus. So if someone comes in at $1 million, someone comes in at 15, 20, we'd welcome them and give them the same percentage discount.
Now, would a business be able to combine across properties? Like if I'm trying to think of an example and I really can't think of one, but so business A has, you know, a warehouse on one side of town and they have a warehouse on another side of town and maybe a trucking depot, and if between the three they did $1 million, are they able to apply for it, or does it have to be at $1 million growth at each location?
I would say it's at each taxable entity, but in that, of course, you know, warehouse distribution is not subject to the incentive. It's a manufacturing incentive, but so apply that same question to manufacturing. It's each taxable entity.
All right, so it was a bad example, but I mean, I guess my question would be, so as long as the same taxable entity owned all three locations and the grand list grew by at least 1 million, they would be eligible for something like that?
I would say yes, right? We'd sit down with our assessor, and that's why we felt very important that, you know, he had a say in the language. Not only did law check it for the legalities and clarity, but the assessor, you know, checked it to make sure that, you know, he could apply what it is we're asking you to adapt.
So in a similar fashion, and because you brought up Bristol Myers and it was part of an example I was going to make, you know, the campus like that, if somebody else was going to come in to do something, change it up, fix it, they have to tear out all the medical labs to do something else over there, that would also all apply as long as the net result went up. Is that correct?
I would say yes.
Great. So when are you calling Amazon?
We already have.
Because I mean, I make that as a light joke, but I mean, with the sortation center here in Wallingford and the fulfillment center in North Haven, and they're looking to do something as a, you know, they've got they're over on the West Coast, they're looking for something on the East Coast. I mean, I can make the joke about it, but I'm also half serious when I say we are smack in the middle of New York and Boston. I can't think of a better place. Let's shop them this incentive. Let's shop them our electric rates. Let's go crazy, because I'm sure every other town is going to as well.
Every other state is going to as well. But yes, you'll be comforted to know that we were on that as soon as the RFP came out. We took a look at the RFP. I don't want to get off subject, but matter of fact, I was contacted by the local reporter today on this very subject, so there may be something in the paper soon. Bristol Myers is 1 million square feet as it stands. It's approved to up to 3 million square feet. Amazon is looking for upwards of 8 million square feet. So it's a longer conversation than perhaps you want to have now, but I'd love to have it with you, because it's one of those things where, you know, you look and we say, is there an opportunity? Let's start with possibility thinking and go after it, but I will cut to the chase and say the outcome is probably not what we would have wanted. But
no. I appreciate that, and I only brought it up as a side discussion. I don't want to get off track. Those are the only questions I had, so thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, they would certainly save money because they wouldn't have to ship so far to my house every day. But anyway, I I want to deal with these separately, because essentially we have 3 programs before us, and the first one is targeted to manufacturers. And I looked at Connecticut General Statute 12-65B, which is the authority under which you put this program together. And I noticed other things or industries in there. And they include warehouse storage or distribution, informational technology, recreational facilities, and health system operations. So I have to assume that based upon your discussions, for whatever reason you rejected those, you know, because this, you're saying we are open for business for manufacturing. But you aren't giving that same message to those other industries that I said. Why?
You want to take that?
It's a great question. We live by 1265B and 1265H on the personal property side. Frankly, it's because warehouse distribution has found its way to Wallingford without any incentive at all, other than low electric rates and all of the other reasons why businesses want to come to Wallingford. Do we need to further incent them through a tax incentive? In our opinion, no. I mean, if anything, I wish we had more space for warehouse distribution. So it is filled up. There's been a great deal of activity in the industrial parks this year regarding manufacturing move-ins and warehouse distribution move-ins. So other things that are incented in recreational facilities. We've had a number of people inquire about indoor recreation. We've had actually 3 very solid inquiries where we've spent time and researched. The issue is finding the land to do it.
Well, and I appreciate that, but does it hurt to add them to this and then it incentivizes them to find the land? You know, because I've talked to somebody who's interested in doing a recreational facility, and they were going to purchase some property and tear down some houses, put something together to get enough, you know, for the parking and all that stuff. If we added them to a program like this, I would think we're open to those kinds of businesses. I don't see a harm. So, I mean, was there a discussion, or we just didn't talk about it?
No, there was absolutely a discussion, and again, the outcome, and we may not be in agreement, is that the issue that we have with the 3 companies that we're looking for indoor recreational facilities now is we don't have parcels of land big enough. They typically need large pieces of land. They typically need to be very flat. They need to be in areas that are not driven by residential zones or border residential zones. And if there's one thing that we don't have a lot of is available land that fits the criteria.
Yeah, without taking something down.
Without taking something down, which frankly doesn't fit their cost models. They typically are not high cost driven operations. So they operate on very lean budgets. So.
And they also enhance a community because, you know, youth and, you know, and even adult sports.
Sure.
It gives another attraction for the town, and, you know, I'm sort of in favor of that stuff. So informational technology is another category that's in the statute. I mean, is there a reason why you didn't extend these programs to that classification?
Well, I would imagine with the, you know, again, specifically to informational technologies, looking at the office space and the conversion of office space, as we would approach any of the people who would come forward and say something, we would have a sit down with them and discuss what they're trying to do. I don't know if, we've had many discussions about informational technology just because of our electric rates and our reliable electric service. I think we have good programs in place based on those incentives, but I don't know if we needed to put something specifically for information technology. At least that's what we came up and committed.
Well, you simply could have added it to the first of these programs, and because it clearly says manufacturing group, you could have said manufacturing or informational technology or sports recreation. You could have mirrored the language, and I just trying to get into your heads as far as why you decided not to, and I'm hearing some things. So. So then the next one is the office development in the I-5 and IX. And it was about the time, I think it was even before I ran the first time for the council, we had a few meetings about the I-5 and the IX. I know Mr. Murrah was there, and with planning and zoning. And the complaints were that there's too much office space in the I-5 and the IX. Can't fill it, people are working from home and that kind of stuff. So it appears what we have here is a plan to incentivize more office space creation in the I-5 and IX, or am I reading something wrong?
So the biggest driver for the incentive is to modernize the office space. So there's office inventory out there, but if you've been in what people refer to as modern office space today, very, very open floor plans, they're very different. They refer to them as Google-like environments as opposed to, you know, walls and cubicles and offices. Councilor Shortell is familiar with the facility that up on Legas Road, that the campus at Green Hill. You know, very modern space, open space. So the office inventory we have in many cases are buildings that are dated. So we're trying to incent, and this is another very fine line between incenting the landlord or incenting the tenant. Because the incentive would go to the landlord who's going to pay the taxes. But we want to incent the landlord to be able to take and negotiate a lower lease rate with the tenant, but to modernize the space in order to attract new tenants for the space.
So one of the things we've talked about in the I-5 and the IX is allowing small manufacturing. And why aren't we dealing with that in this?
That is included. So in the...
What portion of this one? If I perhaps missed it.
Between the manufacturing, personal property, or excuse me, real property for manufacturing and real property for office. Let's just take it for instance. If there's an office building on, let's say it's on 101 Barnes Road, the old Liberty Mutual buildings. All right, so there's one floor occupied, two floors vacant, been 2 floors vacant for a year and a half. If a small manufacturing facility was to come into that particular landlord and say, I'd be interested in populating that space, we want to incent and help that landlord make the investment in taking and repurposing that space in order to attract that tenant. Right now, he's in 2 years hasn't been able to attract the traditional office tenant. So either modernize your space to attract a new tenant, or reinvent your space to attract a new tenant. That's the concept behind these.
I understand, but I'm also familiar with the 8 Sterling Drive property that Quest operated, because my wife worked there for like 10 years. And that's the open floor plan, Google sort of thing, and is that occupied or vacant?
Quest is occupying 10,000 square feet of that. They have taken the building off the market. It's been off the market for over a year now. So it's not that it couldn't be, they were trying to sell it. It's not that they couldn't, they did not sell it, but they've deliberately taken it off the market. So they're not even trying to lease the space right now. I think they're in a holding pattern with that space. But that's a perfect example, because they do have open floor plan in there, and that would be a great retrofit for small manufacturing in that facility. In this particular case, Quest is not in the market to do anything with the building.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Councilor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening to all of you. Tim, I give you and your team credit because you are trying to update our current plan to fit today's business model. I can reflect back, and this morning just reading the paper, I see all of Benny's stores are closing. Benny's, right, a staple of Rhode Island, which I'm sure you're aware of. Gone, brick and mortar is going away. We work in a collaborative zone, a business environment now. And to your point about cubicles going away and so forth, and adopting the West Coast model, we're doing the same thing at AT&T. But real estate costs money, and a lot of corporations are trying to shed business facilities. We are, by asking our technicians and kind of incentivizing them to take their vehicles home with them and pick up their work right from their home instead of coming to one of our big garages. So we're trying to save money. I just wanted to make mention, and this committee already knows very well, the business climate around the state of Connecticut. And from what I've read here, I think you're doing everything we can possibly do to attract businesses. I mean, we have great schools, we have good real estate here, we have low electrical rates, and I don't know anybody that's come to this town in the last, 58 years I've lived in it and said, I hate Wallingford. So I think we've got a lot going for us with 2 major highways going through the state and close proximity to airports in New York City and the Boston markets. So I'm certainly for the changes that your team has proposed here. One question I had, and it's related to the I-5 zone again. We talked about business offices and hotels, and I agree with everything you said. Will we ever see, or do we see any benefit at some point of looking to change the zoning, the I-5, to allow retail in? And the reason I say that is because it would not be terribly burdensome on our infrastructure, because a lot of that I-5 zone off Route 68 is located right off a major highway and on a state road, Route 68 obviously. It might be a burden to our water and sewer and so forth. But I see opportunity for employment taxes and so forth. But I also know the retail market is on the decline, and you know better than I do, so I just wanted your take on that.
I would say that it's going to be certainly part of the planning and zoning discussion when we talk about, you know, what the future uses of I-5 can be. There are 2 very separate courts, you know, on the sides of that whole argument. There are commercial real estate brokers who, again, we work very closely with, because these are the people who understand the market, they understand the inventory, and they make the deals. We have had several that have encouraged us to consider retail. We have had several that said, don't do it. Just don't open that door, not even a crack, or it'll look like, forgive me for saying this publicly, but it'll look like East Main Street in Meriden, and you don't want to do that. So I think it'll be an interesting discussion when it comes up with our town planner to look at I-5 uses.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just chime in a little bit on that, I would have real concerns, because I think it changes a whole neighborhood. All of the highways in an area then have to be upgraded, because people just don't come in along 91. They come from a variety of ways, all to access where the retail is. It turns it into a 9 to 5 operation, into almost what can be a 24-hour-a-day operation, which then impacts public safety. And so there's a whole range of new human behavior that results from 24-hour, you know, retail, restaurants, you name it, all of those issues. So I think we should have some real questions and hesitancy about encouraging that, unless we really have a plan that's going to accommodate all of the increase in costs that will come along with it.
Yeah, okay, good point. Thank you, Mayor, for that.
I will add that Chairman Mira whispered in my ear while the mayor was speaking, and that the I-5 is in a watershed, which adds complications to its future land uses. So
okay. And I just wanted to pick your brain on it, that's all. It was
I look forward to the discussion when that time comes.
Great, thank you. I'm all set, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Questions from the public? Mr. Stankuna.
Daryl Stankuna, 18 Old Village Circle. Some of the businesses that you're trying to go out and reach to lure to come in here, are there any type of like a border of what kind of businesses you're trying to lure into Wallingford, or is it just any businesses you're trying to lure into Wallingford? One as an example, if Mohegan's Son wanted to branch off a casino in Wallingford, would you approve some kind of business like that in here?
Well, to answer the first question, we look for businesses, as stated earlier, frankly, those who are high users of power, because we know we have such a competitive advantage in that particular area. Whether a casino would come or not would be a conversation that would start in planning and zoning, and I'm sure, you know, mushroom from there. There have been some people who had suggested that we reach out to the casinos when they were proposing their quote-unquote north of Hartford proposal. And even though we are quite south of Hartford, people were saying, you know, contact them about the Bristol-Myers site. So we did not do that because it was a north of Hartford proposal. But, so we try to target technology-driven companies, and then a lot of those, again, small specialty manufacturing companies today are technology-centric organizations. They're not machine shops.
So this tax break from 3 million to 1 million would only be if they were Cisco Systems or Sun Microsystems or something from Silicon Valley?
No, the real property tax incentive for manufacturers would be if their NACES code has them designated as a manufacturing facility, then this would potentially apply.
And would there be any regulations if someone said, okay, I want to open up a office space, and then they're going to make their house that they purchase in town to get that break and make their house their business? Would there be any type of regulation on that?
Yeah, there are very strict zoning regulations as to you know, residential zones and zones that allow home-based businesses. So that would be a conversation that we would take directly to planning and zoning for discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the public? There being none, I bring it back to the council, and seeing no further questions, I ask Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Fishbein,
Yes.
Laffin,
Yes.
Letourneau,
Yes.
Shortell,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Testa,
Yes.
Zandri,
Yes.
Chairman Cervoni.
Yes. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work. This is important stuff. I believe we have nothing for item 9. On to item 10.
Mr. Chairman, I move we go into executive session pursuant to Section 1-225F and Section 1-206B of the Connecticut General Statutes regarding strategy and negotiations with respect to the pending tax appeal matter of Plaza 15-5 LLC versus Town of Wallingford.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of going into executive session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I declare the council in executive session. Call the meeting back to order. Is there a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of coming out of executive session signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, I declare the council back in public session. On to item 11.
Mr. Chairman, I move we authorize the settlement in the pending tax appeal matter of Plaza 15-5 LLC versus Town of Wallingford as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilor Shortell.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Fishbein,
No.
Laffin,
Yes.
Letourneau,
Yes.
Marone, I'm sorry, absent. Shortell,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Testa,
Yes.
Zandri.
Yes.
Chairman Cervoni.
Yes. The motion passes. There being no further items on the agenda, a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I declare this meeting adjourned.